This Yugo drives in a perfectly straight line, and this is a goose egg. Only one of those two things is true. At the end of the last project video, I told you that it's not like this thing is undrivable, you just gotta have your wits about you. But that is not true. This thing is murderous and needs to be fixed. Really, all this Yugo needs is a front-end alignment. It needs quite a lot of alignment, but that's basically all it needs. Now, I could take this Yugo to a shop, have it set on some fancy machine equipped with pew-pews and math, and have the job done professionally for just a couple $100s. But what fun is that? I'm going to attempt to do the front alignment myself with no fancy tools right here in my shop. First problem, these bolts are the right size for this knuckle here, but not the right size for this coilover. They wiggle, and that does not make for a very accurate adjustment. The reason that's a problem is because this top bolt hole is a slot, so you can adjust the wheel carrier back and forth in that slot to adjust the camber angle of the car. But this bottom bolt hole is a pivot point. But because this one's oversized for the bolt that's in there, this entire mechanism has slot back and forth, which makes adjusting the camber angle significantly more difficult. So I need to remove the struts, drill out the bottom bolt holes in those struts. Then I can make a new sleeve out of steel to insert to remove that slop. And voila, kind of results I like to see. Get some more of that fantastic paint job on there. Oh yeah. Before I put the strut back in, I might as well replace this split CV boot while I have easy access to it. This is the new CV boot I got to install. It's a universal fit split type CV boot, and these types of boots are pretty much universally known to be complete crap. But I got one because, well, quite frankly, I wasn't paying attention. But at least I don't have to take the CV shaft out of the car to install it, because it just clamps over it in two halves that are literally held together with super glue. So I don't expect this to last very long, but at least it was easy. I've got the super glue on it, which will totally hold up. Now let's clamp the two halves together. There. I give that boot 5 miles until it splits open. Puppy. And to attach these struts, I got some brand new bolts. Partly because the bolts that came off of it looked like they were somehow older than the car. There. Now there's very minimal play in that bottom bolt, so adjustment will be a lot easier. Hey, let's talk about this. The Anker 521 Portable Powerhouse. This video is sponsored by Anker. You know me, my sponsorship segments are usually silly skits or something, but not this time. I just want to tell you about my box because I like it a lot. What is it? This is a portable battery box. You can power stuff with it. Charge up the onboard lithium iron phosphate battery pack capable of 256 watt hours, and you can power various devices through the 200 watt inverter, 12 volt car socket, USB-A ports, and USB-C. Like I said, this is a 256 watt hour lithium iron phosphate battery pack in it. The same battery chemistry that I have in all 4 of my electric cars and my electric go-kart project. It's a very stable, long life battery chemistry, and this has a light in it. You can use it for camping, road trips, a small backup solution. I've actually been using mine for sillier things like avoiding extension cords, or even charging a car battery out in a field. As far as battery life goes, Anker's website says you can charge an iPhone 12 off this thing 20 times, and you can charge a MacBook Air 4 to 5 times. But you're never left guessing, because right here on the screen is a time remaining estimate. And if you turn on this little light here, which basically draws no power at all, it says the time remaining estimate is 183 hours. Because this light only draws 2 watts. For a more realistic example though, when I was charging that car battery in a field, I got about 4 to 5 hours of life out of the thing, which was pretty impressive and very useful. So, how do you charge it? Well, you can charge it via the included wall adapter. You can charge it via the included car adapter. You can also charge it via USB-C in, and my favorite, you can charge it with a solar panel. And for those of you that know what this means, this uses multiple power point tracking technology, not pulse width modulation. If you'd like to check out an Anker 521 for yourself, there'll be a link in the description of this video. Thanks again to Anker for sponsoring this video. Now back to the alignment. I like battery stuff. The camber angle is the angle of the wheel in relation to the ground. This is negative camber, otherwise known as full stank. This is positive camber, and this ain't no camber. Toe angle is the angle of the wheels in relation to the center line of the car. This is toe in, this is toe out, and this is a car. It doesn't have any toes. Jared set up this car with full negative camber, and as you saw just a second ago, with this suspension geometry, the camber angle heavily affects the toe angle. So with full negative camber, there was a heck of a lot of toe in, even with the tie rods retracted all the way in. That heavy toe in had a pretty significant effect on driving. Made the car almost undrivable. As you were going down the road, the wheels were facing each other, so whichever front wheel had the most grip, that's the front wheel that decided the direction of the car. So as you go down the road, it would just randomly dart and change direction, which was unsettling. This also had a pretty destructive effect on the tires. You can see all the feathering going on here because as it goes down the road, the tire's facing slightly inward, so the road is shearing at it sideways. I'm going to set this up so it has a camber angle of 0, just as a nice starting point. So I'm going to eyeball the camber first of all, so that it looks like it's mostly straight up and down. Lock that adjustment in place. Lower the car down onto its own weight. I'm going to put the wheels on these slippery plastic blocks so they can spread out as they need to. And then measure the camber angle. Now, I don't know if it was obvious, but I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm making this up as I go along. My first idea, when I thought about how to measure the camber angle, was to stick a couple of laser levels on each wheel that would project a laser line vertically forward. I'd put a board in front of the car so those laser lines would have something to be projected onto, and then I would put a third laser level on the underside of the car that would project a horizontal line forward, and then I would measure the intersection of all those laser lines to get my camber angle. But as I started thinking about this, I realized that idea is vastly overcomplicated and unnecessary. Instead, what I'm going to do to measure the camber angles is this. This is as simple as it gets. Now, will this be perfect? Of course not. This shop floor is almost certainly not dead flat. Will it be good enough? Oh yeah, especially for my needs. And I can see that this one still has a little bit of negative camber, so I need to raise the car up, give it a slight adjustment, lower it back down, measure it again, and see if I need to do any further tweaking, which I probably will need to do. Almost. A little bit more. I think that is as close as I'm going to get it. Needs to go in just a bit. Needs to go in just the tiniest bit more. That's real good. I'm going to call that close enough. After that camber adjustment, there's so much toe out, the car's practically pigeon-toed, so let's work on that next. Adjustment of the toe angle is done by adjusting the track rod or tie rod end, depending on your persuasion. So I just need to back off the locking nut. Now it's just a matter of essentially unscrewing the tie rod end until it's in the position that I need it to be in. It's quite stiff. Just like with the camber angle adjustment, I'm going to adjust the toe angle until everything's visually close while the car's up on the lift, and then I'll lower it down onto its own weight to do actual measurements. This process of initial adjustment will be tedious, so I'll speed it up using editing. There. To give myself a reference line to measure the toe angle, I'm going to use this little laser cube here that projects a laser in the form of a line. And I need a reference surface to mount this onto the wheel, so I went to the CNC router and cut out this piece of MDF. And before you say anything, no, you obviously don't need a CNC router for this part. I could have used a plank or anything flat whatsoever to mount to the wheel and then mount the laser cube to that. The only reason I'm using this piece of MDF that I cut on the CNC router is because this shape allows me to mount this to the wheel, have a nice solid reference surface. I can mount the laser cube to the middle of that and still have access to the lug nuts to remove the wheel if I so desire. And I'm going to mount this to the wheel and mount the laser cube to this using hot glue. Should be nice and temporary. Hot's not deployed. Ah, touched my hand. Burns. Hot glue is hot! Then I can mount the little laser cube to that. Then do the same thing for the other side, hopefully not burning myself this time. Well, this isn't going to work. What I was envisioning is a laser line that was about 3 feet wide. I'd mark the center line of the wheel and about 18 inches back and about 18 inches forward and measure that in relation to the other wheel. But what I actually get is this. That's not even a foot wide. It barely goes past the edges of the tires, so that's not going to work. I'm going to have to find something different. not the thing I was wanting to pop off. This is what I'm going to use instead. It's a stick and 2 dangly bits, which I swear is a measuring technique and not something inappropriate. Now all I need to do to measure the toe angle is to measure the difference between the front 2 plumb bobs and the rear 2. Now I could measure the toe angle based on these measurements, but I don't need to. I'm going for a toe angle of 0, so I just need to adjust the tie rod ends until these 2 measurements are the same. Right now, the gap between the front 2 markers is about 3/4 of an inch smaller than the gap between the rear 2 markers, so that means there's just a little bit of toe in. So I need to pull the track rods in just a little bit until these 2 measurements are the same. Thankfully, unlike with the camber adjustment, I can make this adjustment while the car is still on the ground. Just check the measurement. I still have a long way to go. That is spot on. They're both at 64 5/8. Now to remove these things that I stuck to the wheels. Lock the tie rod adjustment in place. There's just a locking nut on this. Take the wheels off yet again. Cinch down hard on these camber adjustments so that they won't go out of adjustment. And for the few of you that are wondering, these new bolts that I put on are the same grade as the bolts that I took off. 10.9 or whatever it was. And finally, rotate the tires front to back because the front tires are half shredded. And that's it! It's done now! So now how does it drive after my homebrew front end alignment? I don't know. For that, we're going to go to my nighttime test driving correspondent, Robert. Robert? So much better! So much better! It's not trying to kill me constantly! As a reminder, before I did this front alignment, it randomly darted all over the road like some sort of maniac. And it doesn't do that anymore, so I'm calling this a win. Wait, I have something to add. Now, was my alignment perfect? No, of course not. It was a very coarse adjustment. I was only going for close enough to make this car drivable again, and I've achieved that. The reason I tried an alignment myself, aside from the fun challenge of figuring out how to do an alignment in my own shop, was because I knew I'd have to make modifications to the suspension in order to facilitate a proper alignment. And I did. I had to shrink the 2 bolt holes on the bottom of the struts. I didn't want to take this thing straight to a proper alignment rack, only to have them tell me I need to change this, this, and this, have to bring the Yugo all the way back home, make the modifications, and then take it back to the alignment rack, and potentially have to bring it back home and take it back to the alignment rack several times. By doing everything myself, for the rough adjustment, I could do everything all in one place with the Yugo not moving. I will take this thing to a proper alignment rack at some point in the future, now that the rough alignment is done and the modifications are made, but for now, it's drivable. And that's it! Thank you for watching. Now, I've still got a lot of work left to do to this car. For instance, after I did the rough front end alignment, now there's some clearance issues I need to work out. There's some rubbing and extreme conditions on the fenders here. Now, there are wheel spacers on these front wheels right now. I'm going to have to make some, what do they call it, hub centers or something, to remove the spacers that are in there right now, so I'll probably do that at some point. I'll have to see what it looks like without the spacers with these gigantic tires on it and go from there. But regardless, I've got clearance issues to work out, and there's all kinds of other issues in the car, electrical issues, the carburetor tuning needs some work, and stuff like that. And after all, it is still a Yugo, so it's quite crashy and unrefined down the road. And anyway, until next time, see you later.